Hey everybody, welcome to Slash Bash, where today I am bringing you another Malicious Compliance Reddit video. If you are new to the channel, then subscribe and help me get to my goal of 10,000 subscribers. In our first story, my manager wants me to call the police every time someone doesn't have ID. So a little story from years ago about an assistant manager that doesn't understand the work at all. I worked as a security guard driving around industrial areas and responding to alarms that go off at the buildings from our clients. When I started there, I was told and learned to ask for proper ID, driving license, passport, ID card, if I encounter someone in the building, which was very common as most alarms came from people not turning off the alarm in time or entering the wrong code, and note their details in the report. But, and this will be important later on, if they can't show ID, kindly request them to leave and close the building. If they refuse, call the police to deal with it. Some background to make things clearer. Laws here make it so that security guards are just civilians, which means I can ask for ID, but if they refuse to give it, there's nothing I can do. Only law enforcement officers can demand IDs. Also, my assistant manager hates me for some reason, always looking for something to pin on me. So for a few years, I do this as I was taught. Ask for an ID if I found someone in the building and ask them to leave if they refused or didn't have one with them. Some would show credit cards or other things with their name on it, then I would write it in my report but still ask them to leave. All this time, the assistant manager would go over these reports in the morning, but I never heard any complaint about it, so I was doing stuff right, I thought. After a few years, on this particular day, I get an alarm. I drove over there, arrive at the building, go in and find the cleaning lady doing her job. The alarm system logs shows she's entered the wrong code the first time and was just a little too late entering it correctly the second time, as would happen a lot. I kindly ask her for an ID and she tells me she doesn't have any with her. She shows me a bank card with her name. I write down the name in the report, including it was from a bank card, and tell her she has to leave. She understands, picks up her stuff and leaves. I finish my report and go on my merry way. The next morning, I receive an email from my assistant manager going mental over the fact I sent the cleaning lady away without noting down proper ID details, and telling me the client is mad because they wanted to know who was in the building. I calmly replied that I did what I always did and was instructed to do when I joined the company, and had been doing without any issue for the last 3 or 4 years. The reply came fast with detailed instructions. If someone doesn't have proper ID on them, you call the police and have them identify the person so you can note it in your report. The assistant manager also made a memo stating this to everyone in the unit, which I of course also made a copy of. As the good employee that I am, I followed that instruction to the letter. Most others didn't, as they weren't targeted by the assistant manager, so they could do whatever they wanted. I called the police every time a person couldn't show me proper ID, which happened almost every shift I worked, if not multiple times in a single shift, leading to a few employees of clients actually being arrested for failing to identify to a law enforcement officer. This wasn't my intention at all. Some police officers were jerks and just arrested them even though they could verify the identity of someone fairly simply on location. The police calling my manager, saying why the hell were they called every single day to go and confirm someone's name because they didn't have ID on them. Multiple clients calling the manager why a simple alarm was taking 3 times longer than usual. Clients have to pay per 15 minutes I am on site after the initial 15 minutes have passed, and refusing to pay the extra fee for me waiting for the police to show up. As I expected, I got invited for a talk with my manager and assistant manager to discuss some things. Basically, my manager wanted to chew me out over all the calls he had been getting, let alone people being arrested. The next day, I sit down with my manager and the assistant manager, who looks very cheerful as his favorite target was getting a huge reprimand. The manager asks me why I called the police every time someone doesn't have a proper ID, asking me if I have any idea how pissed off the police are and how many clients are refusing to pay the fee because it takes so much longer now that I have to wait for the police. Basically, I cost the company a lot of money. After the manager has asked these questions, I pull out my folder containing the email conversation with the assistant manager instructing me to do exactly that, and the copy of the now conveniently disappeared from the office memo with the same instructions, both signed by assistant manager, the same assistant manager that is now turning pale, realizing what I'm about to hand over to the manager. I calmly explain to the manager while he is reading both papers that I am only following the instructions given to me, as I had clearly been doing it wrong for the last 3 to 4 years prior to this incident. The face of the manager is slowly turning red from anger, while the assistant manager is turning paler by the second. Before the manager explodes, he asks me to go grab a coffee and wait till he calls me back in. They needed to go over these papers and decide what they would do with me. Sure thing, boss. While I'm enjoying my coffee, I can hear my manager go mental at his assistant. Multiple things like, "How can you be so stupid?" and "They have it on flipping paper, you idiot," are clearly heard across the entire floor. When I get called back in, I can see my assistant manager sitting silently, shamefully behind his computer, attempting to avoid any and all eye contact with me. The manager calmly explains he wasn't aware of these papers and says that I should follow these instructions as all their employees should. He was saving face, as admitting this was wrong and changing the instructions would make the management look bad. He would inform all the clients about this so they can avoid these kinds of incidents. I spend the next 9 years following these instructions, which angered the assistant manager as he would read my reports every morning, talking about how the police had to show up again and again for something silly. Eventually, they found a way to get rid of me, reassigning me to a new position, which I gladly accepted as the work was a lot more fun. I actually became a law enforcement officer with that switch. The pay was better and the hours were even sweeter. Story number 2, no problem, Your Honor. My brother has struggled with a drug addiction for most of his life. About 5 years ago, it tore his family apart. His wife filed for divorce and was awarded full custody of their son. This is all right and proper, as my brother was in no condition to be a father at this time. The road to recovery has been long, but my brother has been working the program and has now been clean for several years. He has no formal custody of his son, though he gets visitation at his ex-wife's discretion. He's been a good and stable father to his son in the last years. However, his ex has not wanted to allow for the possibility that my brother has become well. In fact, she has begun jerking him around with visitation, even planning on removing the son from his father for a period of several months so she can take a long vacation with her new family. My brother, not willing to let this slide, immediately filed for joint custody. The court case was just a day ago, and as expected, his ex has badmouthed his former drug abuse and attempted to paint him as still an addict and a threat to their son. Again, he totally is not. He has been clean for years, employed, and he owns his own home now. His ex was so self-deluded and confident that he had backslid that she loudly demanded in front of the judge that my brother provide a letter from the local president of the drug counseling program stating that he has attended every meeting for the last several years. My brother smiled at the judge and said, "Not only is that not a problem, Your Honor, but I can provide that document today." The judge asked how that was possible. Did my brother already think to bring it with him? "No, Your Honor, but you see, I am the president of our local chapter." I wish I could see the look on that hateful witch's face. It's not official yet, but yeah, he's totally getting joint custody. This is John from /bash. Thanks for watching. If you've enjoyed the video and want to see more of them, then please hit that subscribe button. We'd love for you to drop a like, share it with your friends, and we'll see you in the next one.